The power died the second the emergency alert hit my phone. A flat, robotic voice announced a severe thunderstorm warning for my area, but I didn't need the voice. I already knew. I had felt it in my shoulders all morning, an electric tightness, a pressure behind my ribs like something was about to snap. I was sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor, surrounded by the usual, 3 first aid kits, a portable water filter, enough canned lentils to last 3 weeks, and a flashlight in every drawer. Outside, thunder cracked. I didn't flinch. I felt validated. I stood up and moved automatically. The go bag was already zipped and waiting under the bed, my boots by the door, poncho folded on top. I should have felt in control. This was what I was good at, being ready. I should have felt safe. But then I heard it. Laughter. Not nervous laughter, not from a television. Real, unbothered, joy-soaked laughter, kids splashing around outside my apartment window, their shrieks rising with the storm. I stepped cautiously toward the blinds and pulled them open. There they were, my neighbor's twins, barefoot in the grass, soaked to the skin, kicking water at each other like the sky hadn't just screamed in warning. Their mother was watching from the porch, smiling. Smiling. I stood there, go bag on one shoulder, watching them play like nothing bad ever happened in the world. I wanted to scream at them to get inside. Didn't they know how dangerous this was? Didn't they hear the alert? But my throat closed up. Because the truth was, I didn't want them to stop. I wanted to know what it felt like to laugh during a storm. I wanted to feel anything but what I was feeling. That's when the second blow came. My phone lit up again, not with another weather alert, but a text. One line. From my landlord. Hey, didn't want to drop this during a storm, but I've sold the building. You'll have 30 days to vacate. Paperwork's on its way. My ears rang. I reread the message 3 times, but the words didn't change. 30 days. No warning. No face-to-face conversation. Just gone. My home gone. A place where I had bolted every cabinet to the wall, where I knew every creaky floorboard, every safe spot during a quake. Where I could control things. Where I could breathe. Gone. I stared at the emergency radio on the shelf, suddenly ridiculous. What good was a week's supply of iodine tablets if I didn't even have an address? Thunder rolled again. The lights stayed off. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, so I called my sister. Straight to voicemail. Again. Just like last week. Just like always. I tried Emily, a friend I hadn't seen in months. She answered on the second ring. Hey, I started, trying to keep my voice even. Oh, hey, can I call you back later? She said quickly. I heard music in the background. We're out celebrating. Darren just proposed. I froze. Proposed? She laughed. Yeah? I didn't tell you? Oh my God, I thought you knew. No, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted. I didn't. Anyway, I'll call you later, okay? She hung up. I stood in the dark with my go bag, flashlight beam catching the edges of dusty canned food. The storm outside had become torrential, wind bending the trees sideways. But it wasn't the rain that made me feel like I was drowning. It was this question pulsing in my head like a heartbeat. How long have I been this alone without realizing it? Then, without thinking, I grabbed the garbage bags from under the sink. I started emptying shelves, cans, survival gear, flashlights. Everything went in. I yanked the go bag open and pulled out the emergency binder with all my evacuation routes, copies of documents, insurance contacts. I hesitated, then shoved that in too. And finally, I reached under my bed and pulled out the box I hadn't touched in years. The one I pretended didn't exist. A cheap cardboard container, sealed with duct tape, labeled in fading black marker. Mom's stuff. Do not open. I sliced it open with the edge of a house key. Inside, a crumpled photo of her standing in a doorway, arms crossed, eyes distant. A yellowed custody schedule. A birthday card she never sent. For some reason, I grabbed the card and stuffed it in my coat pocket. Then I walked outside barefoot, straight into the storm. I didn't stop at the porch. I kept walking, past the playing kids, past the parked cars, until I hit the sidewalk, rain blurring the edges of everything. I had no plan, but I knew one thing. If I didn't leave this version of myself behind right now, I never would. So I kept walking. And I didn't look back. The rain didn't stop, and I didn't either. I walked until the muscles in my calves started to ache and my socks sloshed inside my shoes. I had no idea where I was going, just that going felt like something. The city was quieter than usual, the kind of eerie silence that follows a blackout. The traffic lights were out. People were sheltering in place. But I kept walking, soaked and shaking, clutching that stupid birthday card in my coat pocket like it was a compass. I didn't even remember putting it in there. I just remembered the way she'd slammed the door that afternoon, the one time I asked her not to leave me with him. I was 9. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just left. Her silence said everything. A truck splashed through a nearby puddle, snapping me out of the memory. I ducked into a 24-hour diner, the kind with flickering signs and a smell like burnt coffee and freezer grease. A small backup generator was keeping a few lights on inside. No one looked up when I walked in, dripping and shivering. The waitress behind the counter just motioned to the stack of towels on a stool and said, "Help yourself." I did. I sat in a booth, wrapping the towel around my shoulders, staring out the window as lightning webbed across the sky. A man in the corner was talking to himself. An older woman 2 booths over was softly humming and scribbling into a crossword. It felt like the kind of place people drifted into when they had nowhere else to be. Maybe that's why I stayed. The waitress, mid-30s, tired eyes but kind, brought over a mug of something hot. No charge. Power's out, so it's just warm tap water and optimism tonight. I almost smiled. Thanks. She didn't ask why I looked like I'd just walked out of a flood. Maybe she already knew. People like her usually do. You waiting on someone? She asked after a beat. No, I said. I think I just left. Left what? I thought about it for a second. Everything that was supposed to make me feel safe. She gave me a long look and nodded. Good for you. It startled me. What? Most people never get out of the habit of building walls. They just decorate them and call it home. She walked away before I could answer. I sat there for a long time, steam curling from the mug, the towel slowly soaking through. And then I did something strange. I pulled out the birthday card from my pocket and opened it. I'd never read it before. I had refused to. Part of me was afraid it would say too much. The other part was afraid it would say nothing at all. It was blank. No message. Just her name, scrawled in rushed cursive. No happy birthday, no I miss you, no I'm sorry for how I left. Just, Mom. Something inside me cracked. Not all at once. It was quieter than I expected. Like a slow leak in a tire, barely audible, but suddenly you know you're not going anywhere anymore. I closed the card and whispered, "Thanks for nothing." And I meant it, not in bitterness, but in clarity. I had been chasing safety so hard, stockpiling water filters and laminated maps, because I thought if I could control enough of the outside world, I'd never have to feel that blank space again. That moment when you open something expecting love and find air instead. That's when the door opened and a man stumbled in with a girl, maybe 6, maybe 7. Soaked to the bone. The girl was crying, but not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet, restrained sobs, like she thought she wasn't allowed to cry too much. They sat in the booth across from me. The waitress brought over dry towels. We were on the bus when it shorted out, the man explained. She's scared of storms. I looked at the girl. Her hands were trembling, and she was biting her sleeve. I recognized that look. I'd worn it for most of my childhood. Without thinking, I pulled the emergency flashlight out of my coat pocket and walked over. "Hey," I said gently, crouching beside their booth. "I have something that might help." I clicked the flashlight on. It flickered, then glowed a soft, steady beam. I handed it to her. "You can keep it on as long as you want. It's one of the good ones." She looked at me like I'd just handed her a sword. Slowly, her shoulders eased. The man gave me a grateful nod. "That's very kind." I started to say it's nothing, but caught myself. "No," I said. "It's not." I walked back to my booth, sat down, and this time, I really breathed. Not because I was safe, but because, for the first time in a long while, I wasn't just surviving. I was reaching. And maybe that was scarier than any storm I'd ever prepared for. By morning, the storm had passed, but something in me hadn't. The sun pressed against the diner windows like it was trying to pretend nothing had happened. Streets still shimmered with puddles, power lines sagged, but people were moving again, restoring the rhythm. I watched a man in a neon vest clear branches from the sidewalk with a broom too small for the task. He worked like someone used to being ignored. I paid for a cup of coffee I didn't drink, thanked the waitress, and stepped outside with the damp towel still tucked under my arm like a relic. I should have gone home, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. My phone buzzed, 5 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Then a voicemail. I played it. Hi, this is Melissa from Southridge Property Management. Just following up, your lease transfer will be finalized by the 15th. Please vacate by then. Thanks. My stomach dropped. Lease transfer? I called back immediately. She picked up on the second ring, chipper. Hi, I just got a voicemail. I don't understand. Transfer to who? I wasn't informed. Oh, the paperwork was signed last month. It's being transferred to your ex. I blinked. My ex? Yep. Evan Carver. You both were listed on the original lease, right? I felt like the ground shifted under me. We broke up nearly a year ago. He moved out. Well, I have his signature right here, she said, flipping through papers. It says the new arrangement was mutual. My throat tightened. But I never signed anything. Oh, she said, suddenly less chipper. That's odd. Maybe it was e-signed? He'd done it without me. Without even asking. And the building let him. Just like that, the home I fought to make stable after he left was handed back to him, wrapped in fine print and silence. I hung up before she could apologize. I don't remember walking. Only that I ended up in front of a building I hadn't seen in almost 5 years. Evan's office. Or what used to be. I don't know what I thought I'd do, storm and demand answers, but the door was locked, the sign replaced. He'd moved on. Again. I sat on the curb like a drunk without a plan. I had packed for blackouts, blizzards, chemical spills, but not this. Not betrayal disguised as paperwork. Not the quiet kind of erasure that rewrites your history while you're busy surviving it. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my sister. I almost didn't answer. Hey, she said. You okay? You didn't respond last night. I hesitated. What made you call now? She exhaled. I don't know. Guilt? The storm? I had this feeling. We hadn't spoken in months. Our calls always felt like unpaid debts, awkward, full of resentment. But now her voice sounded different. Lighter, maybe. Less performative. I got kicked out, I said plainly. My name's not on the lease anymore. What? She said, voice rising. Wait, are you serious? Evan? How is that even legal? I don't know, I said. But it's done. Silence on the other end. Then she said, you can come here. I actually laughed. Since when? Since now. Since you clearly have no one else. There it was. The jab. The reminder. Forget it, I said, and ended the call. But instead of walking away, I sat there. Let the shame settle. Not just about her, or Evan, or the apartment, but about how I'd let every inch of my life become a fortified bunker. I'd cut people off preemptively, hidden behind my caution like it was a virtue. But the irony was brutal. Despite all that prepping, I hadn't seen this coming. I looked up and realized I was across the street from a hardware store. The sign said clearance, moving supplies. So that's what I did. I bought boxes. Tape. A permanent marker. The cashier asked if I was going far. No, I said. Just leaving something behind. Then I caught a bus back to the apartment, my apartment, for now. As I unlocked the door, everything felt different. The canned food looked like clutter. The first aid kits looked absurd. All the careful order I'd built now looked like someone trying to hold back an earthquake with masking tape. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I started packing. But I didn't pack the way I used to, with paranoia, sorting everything by disaster type. This time, I asked a question I hadn't dared before. If I could only keep what makes me feel alive, what stays? The answer surprised me. I kept the photo of my mom at the door, not because I forgave her, but because I wanted to stop pretending she didn't matter. I kept the flashlight the little girl had returned at the diner. Her dad had brought it back that morning with a note. She slept with it like a nightlight. Thank you. And I kept the birthday card. Not because it had meaning, but because the emptiness of it did. It reminded me what I'd been trying to outrun. By nightfall, most of the apartment was in boxes. I sat on the floor, surrounded by tape and silence, when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my neighbor, the mom of the kids who played in the storm. She held a folded towel and a shy smile. "You left this," she said. "Thanks." She hesitated. "We're ordering pizza. You want to come by?" I almost said no. Almost defaulted to my usual out. But then I remembered the girl with the flashlight. The one who was afraid and didn't want to be. "Yeah," I said. "That sounds good." She smiled. "Pepperoni, okay?" "Perfect." And just like that, for the first time in what felt like years, I chose something without a contingency plan. It wasn't the pizza or the small talk that caught me off guard. It was how quickly the quiet moments started to feel like something I missed. Their apartment was only one floor above mine, but it felt like a different world. Cozy but chaotic in a lived-in way, art projects half-finished on the counter, socks peeking out from under the couch, music playing softly from someone's phone in the next room. No one flinched when the power flickered again. No one ran for a flashlight or reached for a checklist. They just laughed and lit candles. I sat at their kitchen table with a paper plate in front of me and a kid to my left, Caleb, I learned, and his twin sister, Ava, opposite me. They had questions. A lot of them. "Why do you have so many flashlights?" Ava asked between bites. "Are you a spy?" Caleb added. "No," I said, smiling. "I just like to be prepared." "For what?" he said. "Aliens?" "Everything," I answered without thinking. The mom, Maya, gave me a look, half curiosity, half concern. "You okay with us asking questions?" "My kids are intense." "They're fine," I said. "It's kind of nice, actually." She poured herself another glass of lemonade. "You always seemed. I don't know. Like you were on a mission. We used to call you Storm Lady." No offense. None taken. There was something disarming about how casually they accepted me into their mess. Not because they needed me. Not because I proved my usefulness. Just because I showed up. That night, after I said goodbye and walked back downstairs, I didn't lock the door behind me 3 times like usual. I locked it once, then stopped myself from going back to check. I told myself that if something happened, I'd figure it out. Not prevent it, not control it. Handle it. That was new. The next day, I got an unexpected email. A job offer. Not a big one, just part-time admin work at a local nonprofit I'd applied to months ago and forgotten. The message was brief, polite. The kind of thing I would have normally agonized over for days, researching the organization, checking salary benchmarks, Googling employee reviews. Instead, I replied within an hour and said yes. The work was simple but meaningful. Organizing volunteer shifts, responding to inquiries, helping with food pantry logistics. I found myself caring about people I hadn't even met. I started showing up early. Started making coffee before anyone else got in. It wasn't exciting work, but it was human. Predictable in all the ways that didn't require control. It gave my hands something to do that didn't involve stockpiling or scanning for risk. Maya invited me over again that weekend. We baked cookies with the twins, even though none of us really knew what we were doing. Caleb burned the bottoms. Ava dropped half the flour on the floor. Maya laughed until she cried. I didn't hover. I didn't flinch. I sat on the kitchen stool and let the mess happen. Later, after the kids had gone to bed and the dishes were piled high, Maya handed me a glass of wine and said, "You don't have to answer this, but what happened to you?" I looked at the ceiling for a long time before answering. I grew up in houses where nothing was nailed down. My mom left when I needed her most. My dad never really unpacked. It felt like no one ever intended to stay. So I started building my own shelter. Not a home, just walls. She nodded like she understood more than she let on. That sounds exhausting. It was, I said. But at least I could pretend I was safe. She looked at me. And now? I hesitated. Now I think, maybe safety isn't the point. She didn't push. Just smiled. But the illusion of peace didn't last. On Tuesday morning, I got a call that shattered the quiet. A man named Victor, Maya's ex-husband. The school had called him when the twins didn't get picked up. Maya hadn't shown up. He was panicked. I told him I'd check upstairs. I ran up 2 flights, heart hammering, and banged on her door. No answer. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. I walked back down, hands shaking, and told Victor what I knew. We called the hospitals. The police. No one had seen her. That night, the twins slept at my place. I found old board games I'd never played and let them eat cereal for dinner. They didn't cry. That's what scared me most. It wasn't until they were asleep on the couch, curled up like sandbags against a flood, that I realized something sharp. I wasn't prepared for this. Not the worry. Not the fear. Not the weight of being needed. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't reach for a flashlight. I just sat with it. The morning after Maya disappeared, I woke up before the twins. They'd curled into each other on the pull-out couch, limbs tangled under the quilt I kept for emergencies. I watched them for a long time, wondering how children could look so calm in a world that felt like it was unraveling one thread at a time. I made toast and coffee, poured orange juice into 2 mismatched mugs, then sat at the kitchen table and waited for some kind of answer to arrive. Through the door, my phone, a knock, anything. Nothing did. By noon, Victor called again. Still nothing, he said, voice tight. She hasn't touched her bank account. No activity. Her phone's off. He paused, and I could hear papers shuffling in the background. Did she ever talk about not wanting to come back? The question landed like a punch. She loved them, I said. She made it messy and loud and chaotic, but she was here. That means something. He didn't argue. Just said, I'm coming to get them tomorrow. You shouldn't have to do this alone. But I didn't mind. I kept them busy all day, took them to the library, let them pick whatever they wanted for dinner. Mac and cheese and strawberries, which they ate like it was a gourmet meal. We played charades. Watched old cartoons. I laughed more than I expected. It wasn't easy, but it was real. And I didn't panic. That night, after they were asleep again, I went back upstairs to Maya's apartment. The building manager let me in. I walked through slowly, trying to read the silence like it might hold an answer. Everything looked untouched. Dishes in the sink, laundry in a basket by the door. No note. No sign of struggle. Just absence. On her fridge was a shopping list written in crayon. Milk, cereal, glue sticks. I took a picture of it before I left, like it might explain something later. Back in my apartment, I sat on the floor and stared at my packed boxes. I'd almost forgotten they were still there, sealed up and ready for departure. It hit me then, how close I'd come to vanishing too. Not physically, but in all the quiet ways that add up. Avoiding people. Avoiding mess. Avoiding pain. All in the name of preparation. I opened the nearest box. Pulled out a folder full of old emergency contacts, route maps, contingency plans. Things I'd built like armor. None of it told me what to do now. I heard Ava stirring in the next room, and when I peeked in, she was sitting up on the couch. Do you think she's gone forever? She asked. Her voice was steady, like she'd already braced for the answer. Like she had grown up with disappointment as a second language. I sat beside her. I don't know, but I don't think she meant to leave you like this. She looked at her knees. She used to say she was tired all the time. That she needed a break. I waited. She said maybe she'd just disappear someday. Like poof. And how did that make you feel? She shrugged. I thought she was kidding. But then I started making sure my bag was always packed. Just in case. I blinked. You keep a go bag? She nodded. Mine's smaller. Just stuff I'd want if I had to leave fast. Socks, snacks, a picture of me and Caleb. One of her, too. I didn't know what to say. So I said, can I see it? She got up, padded over to her backpack, and pulled out a plastic folder. Inside was a crumpled granola bar, 2 extra batteries, and 3 photos. One of them was of Maya and the kids at the beach. Maya wasn't looking at the camera. She was staring off to the side, her face unreadable. I handed it back gently. "You're really brave, you know," I said. "I'm scared," she replied. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you still show up." She looked at me like no one had ever said that to her before. Then she nodded and climbed back under the blanket without another word. The next morning, Victor showed up early. He looked 10 years older than he had on the phone. He hugged them both like he wasn't sure if he should, then turned to me. "Thank you," he said. "I don't know how you managed all this." I didn't tell him I didn't know either. I just said, "They were easy to love." He blinked at that, then helped them carry their things to the car. Ava waved from the window as they pulled away. I waved back. When they turned the corner and vanished, the apartment felt gutted. I closed the door, leaned against it, and said out loud, "I am not prepared for this." But this time, the fear didn't rise like it used to. Because even in the middle of uncertainty, I had chosen something. I had stayed when I could have run. I had held space for someone else's storm. And I was still standing. The apartment was too quiet without them. No spilled cereal, no clunky footsteps overhead, no voices calling out from one room to the next. I thought the silence would feel like safety again. It didn't. It felt like waiting. I went to work the next day and stared at my screen for over an hour before realizing I hadn't typed a single word. My inbox was full of tasks, event reminders, volunteer rosters, pantry restock schedules, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting to Maya's empty apartment, to Ava's plastic folder, to the fact that, somehow, I had become the person people called when things fell apart. At lunch, I sat on a bench behind the building, eating an apple one didn't want, listening to the sound of someone vacuuming through the back window. I kept thinking about what I'd told Ava, that being brave wasn't about not being scared. I wondered if I actually believed that, or if I was just repeating something I'd heard once and decided sounded true. I looked down at my hands, still stained faintly from the Sharpie I used to label boxes last week, and thought, "You've packed for everything except this." That night, I made myself go back upstairs. Not to break in or search, just to stand in front of the door. To stop pretending I hadn't been waiting for her to come back. I pressed my palm against the wood like it might carry a pulse, some sign that she was still out there, choosing her way back. Instead, I found something taped to the frame. A thin envelope with my name on it written in shaky pen. I didn't even hear myself gasp, I just stared. I opened it in the hallway. It wasn't a letter. Just a note, scribbled in uneven lines. I couldn't say goodbye. I didn't want them to see me like this. "You're good with them. Better than me. Please forgive me. M." I read it 3 times. The first time, I felt cold. The second, I felt rage. The third, I felt something else entirely, recognition. Because that kind of leaving didn't come from cruelty. It came from exhaustion so deep, it felt like mercy. I walked back down to my place, shut the door behind me, and sat on the floor with the note in my lap. I remembered every day I'd fantasized about doing the same. About vanishing cleanly. Leaving no pieces behind for anyone to pick up. And yet, when Maya did exactly that, it made me furious. Not because she left, but because I understood why. I understood it too well. I stood, opened the closet, and pulled down the last sealed box. The one marked personal. I hadn't opened it since the day I started packing. Inside were 3 things: a framed photo from college, a folded newspaper clipping about a car crash I never talked about, and a journal I hadn't written in since I was 23. I opened the journal and flipped through pages of notes written by a version of me I didn't recognize anymore. She was meticulous, sharp, scared of everything she couldn't predict. There was an entry I barely remembered writing. Dated 4 months after Evan left. "If I keep everything in order, nothing else can fall apart. The world can't surprise me if I'm ready for the worst version of it." I slammed it shut. Sat with the sentence. I'd built my life around that logic. Stocked up on canned food, memorized escape routes, kept people at a safe emotional distance in case they disappeared. And even now, with all of it stripped away, I was still clinging to the illusion that being prepared made me safe. But it didn't. It made me numb. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a trash bag, and started emptying the boxes one by one. Not the things that mattered, the real ones. Just the things that gave me the illusion of control. I tossed out expired rations, threw away 2 radios, left a map book on the steps for someone else to take. The last thing I dropped in was a copy of a will I'd written in my 20s. It was 3 pages long and told no one anything useful. I'd written it in a panic after my first panic attack. Once the bag was full, I tied it shut. I didn't feel lighter or triumphant. Just clear. I sat down at my tiny table with a note from Maya still beside me. I didn't know if she'd ever come back. I didn't know if I would forgive her. But I knew one thing now: you don't get to survive life. You only get to live it. And that means sometimes being broken. Sometimes being alone. And sometimes showing up anyway. I picked up the journal. This time, I opened to a blank page. Then I wrote, "Today, I didn't prepare for anything. And I'm still here." I didn't tell anyone about the note. Not Victor, not the police, not the building manager who still knocked twice a week to ask if I'd heard anything. It wasn't about protecting Maya anymore. It was about something I hadn't admitted to myself until then. I wasn't waiting for her to come back. I was deciding who I wanted to be without her. A week passed. Then 2. I kept showing up to work, answering calls, stocking shelves. I let myself talk to people, not small talk, real talk. I said yes when someone invited me to a potluck. I helped an elderly woman fill out her housing assistance paperwork and sat with her after she cried. I didn't rush to solve anything. I just listened. One Friday afternoon, I found myself standing outside the community center with nothing to do for the first time in months. I'd forgotten what idle felt like. There was an outdoor flea market setting up in the park across the street, so I wandered through it, letting myself be pulled by whatever caught my eye: homemade soaps, mismatched teacups, little stitched pouches with no practical use. I bought a bright red coin purse I didn't need because it made me smile. As I was walking away, I heard someone say my name. I turned and saw Emily, my former friend, the one who'd brushed me off the night she got engaged. She was standing near a booth selling second-hand books, holding a toddler in one arm. Her face flickered between awkward and relieved. "Wow," she said. "I haven't seen you in." "Yeah," I said. "It's been a while." She glanced down at the child, then back up at me. "This is May. She's almost 2. I nodded. "She's beautiful." "I'm sorry," she said abruptly. "About that night? The way I rushed you off the phone." I don't know, wrapped up in my own stuff. I should have been there. I didn't say it was okay. It wasn't. But I wasn't angry anymore. "I think we were both different people then," I said. "I kept everyone at a distance. Even the ones who tried." She exhaled, like I'd just given her permission to forgive herself. "You look different," she said. Not in a bad way. Just lighter. It was the first time anyone had said something like that to me. And I realized, standing there in a crowd of strangers, that I believed her. We talked for a few more minutes. Traded numbers, loosely promised coffee. I didn't know if we'd follow through, but it didn't feel like an obligation. It felt like possibility. That night, I walked home without checking the shadows behind me. I left the flashlight in my bag, untouched. My apartment still had boxes in the corner, but I wasn't in a rush to finish unpacking. Some things needed time. I passed Maya's door without pausing. Back inside, I pulled out the journal and flipped to the next page. I wrote, "Today, I made space for something new." I didn't brace for it. I didn't plan it. I just let it happen. The next day, Victor called. She came back. The room spun. I sat down. "She showed up at the school," he said. Looking thin, tired. "But okay." They called me, and I went straight over. He didn't sound angry. Just stunned. She asked about the kids. Asked if they were all right. I told her they were with me, safe, and that you'd helped more than anyone. She cried. I swallowed. "Is she staying?" "I don't know," he said. but she asked to see them. And I said yes. I hung up and sat in silence. I didn't feel relieved, or sad, or triumphant. I just felt still. Later that week, there was another knock at my door. It was Maya. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her eyes were red, her sleeves too long. But she held herself upright. That mattered. "I'm not here to explain," she said. "I just wanted to say thank you." I nodded. "They missed you." "I missed them too," she said. "But I couldn't come back until I believed I could be enough." "I know that sounds selfish." "No," I said. "It sounds familiar." She looked down, smiled sadly. "I never thought you'd be the one who showed up for them." "I didn't either," I said. "But they needed someone. And I needed to stop hiding." She reached into her coat and pulled something out, a flashlight. The same one I'd given Ava. She held it out to me. She said to give it back. I took it. It was scuffed, a little cracked, but still working. "Thank you," I said. "No," she said. "You kept them safe when I couldn't. You gave them light when I had none left. That's more than I ever gave myself." Then she left. I stood at the door, holding the flashlight, thinking about what it meant to be ready. I used to believe it meant protecting myself from every possible loss. But maybe readiness wasn't about guarding against pain. It was about being strong enough to feel it and still stay. The day I moved out, the sky was clear. No warnings, no alerts. Just sunlight on the sidewalk and a breeze that rattled the trees without sounding like danger. The kind of day that would have made me anxious before, too unpredictable, too bright. Now it just felt like weather. I didn't pack like I used to. No color-coded bins. No laminated checklist. Just a few essentials, a few keepsakes, and one cardboard box labeled "Open this last." Inside were the birthday card, the flashlight, the crayon shopping list, and the journal with its final page still blank. I didn't need to write anything else. The truth had already made its way into my bones. The new apartment was smaller. Fewer windows. But the light came in anyway, and I didn't try to block it out. 2 weeks in, I got a text from Ava. "Can I call you?" She didn't wait for a reply. I picked up on the first ring. "Guess what?" she said. "We had a family meeting." Sounds serious. It was. Mom said we're gonna start therapy together. Caleb said he only agrees if they have snacks. I told him that's not how therapy works. I laughed. He's not wrong to negotiate. She said she's trying. For real this time. And she thanked me for keeping my bag packed. Said it helped her come back. There was a pause. Then she added, "I'm not gonna keep it packed anymore. I think I want to stay now." I sat down at the kitchen table and felt the tears come, not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet proof that something had shifted. "I'm proud of you," I said. "I'm proud of you too," she replied. "You didn't run." "I wanted to." "I know. But you didn't." When the call ended, I sat in the stillness for a while. I used to think stillness was something to fear. Now I understood it as a place to land. Later that night, I invited Emily to coffee. We sat outside on mismatched chairs and didn't pretend to be the same people we were before. She told me about the way motherhood cracked her open. I told her about the way fear had hardened me. We didn't promise to be best friends again. We just agreed to keep showing up. On the walk home, I passed a little girl selling lemonade from a table she'd scribbled on with markers. No price, just a jar that said donations. I bought 2. One for me. One for whoever needed it next. At home, I opened the "Open this last" box and pulled out the flashlight. I turned it on. The beam was dim now, barely enough to light a closet. I left it on the windowsill anyway, facing outward. Not as a warning. As a welcome. I don't prepare for disasters anymore. Not because they stopped coming, but because I stopped pretending I could outrun them. Now, I prepare for connection. For risk. For days when the sky is too bright and I'm tempted to hide. I prepare for joy that might not last in people who might leave and the quiet after they're gone. But I don't build walls around those things anymore. I build a life with space in it. Because I finally understand. Being safe isn't the same as being alive. And I want to live. You can spend your whole life preparing to lose everything, or you can choose to show up anyway.